still remember that moment when my heart felt like it was being crushed. A Friday evening in early November. The air was turning cold and rain tapped against the glass windows of my 6th-floor apartment in Seattle. I was curled up in an armchair, scrolling through my phone out of habit after a long work week, until that image appeared on my screen. A photo, not an ad, not a post from an influencer I followed, but from Tessa, my best friend of nearly 10 years. She was kissing a man in the glow of a seaside sunset. A kiss that made no attempt to hide, no need for explanation. I recognized him instantly. Liam. The man I once believed was the missing piece in my life. The caption underneath hit like a punch. The most beautiful things come when you least expect them. A new chapter begins. I dropped my phone as if it had shocked me. My chest tightened. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Everything inside me, trust, memories, and all the things I once thought were solid, shattered like glass hitting the floor. We had broken up just 9 months ago. It was a Tuesday afternoon at our usual coffee spot on Pike Place. Liam sat across from me with a somber look that now seemed laughable. He said, "I think I need time to find myself again. It's not because of you, you're amazing. But I'm not ready for commitment." I nodded like a fool, trying not to cry in the crowded cafe. I even tried to understand him. I told myself maybe he really did need space to grow. But now, seeing Liam, the man who said he wasn't ready, kissing my best friend, I felt like I'd just walked out of a cruel joke. He didn't need space, he needed an escape route. To run to Tessa. The worst part wasn't the photo. It wasn't even the blatant betrayal. It was the truth sinking into my gut. They'd been together before Liam and I officially broke up. I tried to call Tessa, my hands shaking so badly the screen blurred with sweat. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello?" Her voice sounded like nothing had happened. "Were you ever going to tell me?" I asked, every word tearing from my throat. Silence. I heard her inhale. "Aria, I was going to call you this weekend. It's not what you think." "Not what I think?" I heard myself laugh, a hollow sound. "So when did it start, Tessa?" "About 3 months ago." I closed my eyes. My heart seemed to stop. 3 months? I repeated, barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Aria, we didn't mean for it to happen, it just did. I don't know how." "Tessa," I cut in, my voice colder than the winter wind. "Things like this don't just happen. They require choices, and you both chose, while I was still crying over a man who told me he wasn't ready to love anyone." I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I hung up. Images raced through my mind. Those dinners the 3 of us used to have. The nights Tessa came to my place to comfort me, saying things like, "You need to let Liam go. You deserve better." Maybe they had been holding hands behind my back the whole time. I sat frozen, overcome by emptiness, like my whole life had just been wiped clean with one swipe of the screen. I don't remember how long I sat in that chair after ending the call with Tessa. Could have been hours, maybe all night. The wall clock had stopped ticking at some point and I didn't bother to replace the battery. Time had become a luxury I no longer believed in. I just existed, surrounded by heavy breaths, in an apartment that hadn't felt like home since Liam walked out the door. The days after passed like a foggy dream. I took unpaid leave, citing mental exhaustion, to my manager. She gently told me to rest, not to rush back. But the truth was, I didn't know when, or if, I ever wanted to return to that office. I cut off all contact, messages from friends went unanswered, my phone stayed on silent for weeks. I locked my main Instagram account but quietly created a new one just to watch them. Every photo they posted was another blade to the chest. Tessa wore the wine-colored beanie I gave her last Christmas. Liam held her from behind in a picture taken in Portland, the place he and I once went to celebrate our 2-year anniversary. A caption under the photo read, "You are home." I let out a dry laugh. Words someone once whispered into my ear were now being said to someone else. Same script, different face. At night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Not because I still loved Liam, but because I had once believed in my friendship with Tessa more than anything in the world. We had made plans to be each other's bridesmaids. We'd promised to grow old together, to stand by one another no matter what. And yet, with one stolen kiss, she had destroyed it all. Without a second thought, I began punishing myself, skipping meals, refusing to leave the apartment, not showering for days. I visibly lost weight, but no one noticed. Because I wouldn't let anyone near me. Until Noah, my brother, pounded on my door at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. He lived in Tacoma, almost an hour's drive from Seattle, but still showed up unannounced. "Aria?" His voice called through the door. "I know you're in there. Don't make me get security." I planned to ignore him, but the knocking was relentless. In the end, I dragged myself to the door. Noah stepped in, scanning the place. "This looks like the kind of place crime documentaries are filmed in." He stepped over a pile of takeout boxes, picked up a hoodie crumpled on the couch. "And you, Aria? You don't even look like you." Meant to say something sarcastic, but my throat closed up. He pulled the curtains open, letting the morning light flood in. A slap of reality I couldn't avoid. "You're throwing your life away over people who crushed it without blinking." His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. "I'm not saying this to make you feel worse. I'm saying it so you remember who you are. You're the one who held everything together when Mom was going through cancer treatment, the one who walked across that stage with a full-ride scholarship. You are not this shadow sitting in front of me." I stayed silent, but something inside me, like a stretched wire, finally reached its limit. Something I'd been trying to ignore but could no longer run from. That night, after Noah left, I opened the dusty laptop I hadn't touched in weeks. I logged into my company email, marked every unread message, and deleted anything sent before the day Liam walked out. I opened Spotify and played the old playlist, the one I had avoided because it reminded me of him. Now I listened to every song one last time, just to let it all pass through, like a quiet ritual of release. I stepped into the bathroom, turned the water as hot as I could stand, and stood still under the shower. I washed my hair with jasmine-scented shampoo, the same one Tessa once complimented. I didn't even realize I still had it. After drying my hair, I looked at myself in the mirror. Sunken eyes, cracked lips. But something had shifted. In my own gaze. If this was the bottom of the pain, I would use it as my springboard. I didn't know yet what I would do, but one thing was certain. I wouldn't let them finish this story for me. I started with the smallest things, dusting the bookshelf, folding the blanket neatly after getting out of bed, throwing away the fast food containers I'd treated like loyal companions for the past month. The apartment didn't turn into a home in one afternoon, but I knew transformation begins in the place you live, the place you breathe every day. I called my old therapist, the one I had seen a few times after my mom passed away when I was 23. Her voice over the phone was still as gentle and firm as I remembered. "I remember you, Aria. And I'm really glad you called." During the first week of therapy, I didn't talk much. Just sat there, hands clutching a mug of peppermint tea while she asked, "What are you trying to outrun?" I hesitated, but deep down, I knew I didn't want to run anymore. I wanted to face it, to reclaim the part of me that had been crushed under captions, restless nights, and the reflection I no longer recognized. Outside, the skies were still gray, but I started waking up earlier. I wanted to see the morning light spill into my tiny kitchen. I wanted silence that no longer felt like punishment. I picked up my camera again, the old Canon that used to be glued to my side in college. I walked to the park near my building, started capturing small things, a rain-soaked bench, an old woman knitting under a tree, a toddler chasing pigeons. Real moments. Nothing staged. And then I went back to the gym in my apartment complex. Each morning felt like a battle with myself, but after every lap, every lift, I could feel my body was no longer just a hollow shell. I was coming back. To myself, little by little. I also cleaned up my social media. I unfollowed accounts that drained me. Followed pages about photography, travel, meditation instead. I began writing again. Just small notes to remind myself my story wasn't over. One afternoon in early February, I got an email from Julie, the creative director at the Portland office. I had applied for a transfer there a year ago, but later withdrew my application because of Liam. Arya, we're reopening the international content manager position. I remember how well you did during last year's campaign. If you're still interested, let me know by the end of this week. I read the email over and over, almost unable to believe it. That opportunity. I had once let it go, thinking Liam was a reason to stay in Seattle. But now, everything had changed. I didn't reply right away. I printed the email and taped it to my fridge. Every morning while making coffee, I'd read it like a quiet reminder. You can choose again. Noah called me every week, always asking, "How are you today?" Not as small talk, but because he truly wanted to know. I told him about the camera, the gym, Julie, about how I no longer cried every time I saw someone with hair like Tessa's on the street. "I don't know if you'll take the job," he said, "but no matter what you choose, I'm proud of you for standing up, not letting yourself be trampled." 3 days later, I replied to the email. "I'm ready, let me know when I can start." I hired movers, found a new apartment in Portland, and booked a ticket out of the city. Seattle no longer suffocated me, but it wasn't home anymore either. The day before I left, I went back to the little cafe at the end of my block, the place where Tessa and I once wrote our thesis together, where I once shared with Liam my dream of opening my own photography studio. I didn't go there to reminisce, but to close the chapter. I sat at our old corner table, drank a flat white, and wrote one line in my notebook. "I'm not going back, I'm going back to myself." That evening, while packing the final suitcase, I opened the closet and saw the pale pink dress Tessa had given me for my 27th birthday. I touched the soft fabric, then placed it gently into a trash bag. It no longer felt necessary to hold on to anything. I left the apartment the next morning. The bus took me to a new city, a new job, a new life, where I would no longer be Arya who got left behind, or Arya who was betrayed. I was making tea in my new kitchen in Portland when the mail slot clinked. A thick cream-colored envelope slid through with gold-trimmed edges and elegant script. Arya Quinn. I picked it up, hands still damp. Just holding it, I knew exactly what was inside. I sat at the dining table, staring at the envelope for several minutes. Finally, I picked up a letter opener and sliced a clean line. Inside was a wedding invitation. Their names were embossed in silver, Tessa Moore and Liam Carter. The date, a Saturday in early June. The venue, an outdoor garden wedding in the southern suburbs of Seattle. I closed my eyes for a few seconds, as if I could erase it all just by not looking. But the final lines made me pause. "Arya, I know this may be the last thing you want to receive, but you are the most important part of my life for nearly a decade. Without you there, that day won't feel complete. If you can't come, I understand. But if you can, I truly hope to see you. With all my old love, Tessa." I set the letter down, carefully, almost absurdly so, as if it might explode at any moment. That afternoon, I told Claire, my coworker and new close friend at the Portland office. We were sitting at our usual cafe near work. Claire knew everything. About Seattle, about Tessa and Liam, about the days I couldn't get out of bed. "She actually invited you?" Claire frowned. "Why, to prove that everything's fine?" "Maybe," I said, stirring the latte in front of me. "Or just to ease her guilt. Or to finish the performance." Claire went quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you going?" I hesitated. A part of me still wavered. Not because of any lingering feelings, but because of something deeper. A part of me wanted to stare straight at everything I used to fear. I thought about that final afternoon in my Seattle apartment, about every step I'd taken since. And I knew one thing for sure. I didn't do all of this just to keep hiding. I looked up. "I'm going." Claire's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "I'm not going to crash it. I'm not going to give anyone a lesson. I just want to stand there, see them, and know for certain I'm not in that place anymore." She smiled slowly. "Then, at least, wear the kind of dress people turn their heads for." Her message sat there unopened. I never typed a word back. But a week later, Jake, my brother, called. His voice was laced with curiosity. "Did you get the invitation?" "Yeah." What are you thinking? I simply said I'm making plans. He exhaled, relieved. I don't know what you're going to do, but I hope this time you don't choose silence. I didn't tell him that actually I wasn't staying silent. I was just waiting for the right moment to show up. In a way they never expected. A month later, I stood in front of the mirror inside a boutique fitting room in the Alberta district. I was wearing a deep teal satin dress, square neckline, open back. Not flashy, not loud, but just enough to make someone look twice. With nude heels and a low bun, you'll look like you just stepped out of a high-end perfume campaign, the sales assistant said, unaware I wasn't looking for compliments. I stared at myself in the mirror. Still Aria. But Aria who had survived. Who knew how to walk into a room without asking for permission. I booked a flight back to Seattle exactly 3 days before the wedding. I didn't reach out to Liam. I didn't text Tessa. I only sent one message to Claire before leaving. You were right, the dress is stunning. Portland wasn't the final destination, just a layover on the way to breathing freely again. 2 months after transferring, I was nominated for a global project with a French natural cosmetics brand. The main coordination office was in Amsterdam, and my team was in charge of creative strategy. I had 3 cross-time zone meetings a week, and for the first time in a long while I felt like I was actually living in my work, not just getting through the days. At the end of that quarter, the regional director offered me a temporary creative lead role at the Berlin office, filling in for someone on maternity leave. I accepted. I didn't call anyone to share the news. Didn't post it online. Just folded my clothes neatly into a suitcase and booked a one-way ticket. I arrived in Berlin on a sunny morning, with traces of late-season snow still melting. The city buzzed with an odd kind of energy, historic and full of fresh ideas. I rented a small apartment in Prenzlauer Berg, surrounded by local cafes, art galleries, and a bakery where the owner greeted me in both English and German. I started rebuilding my rhythm, morning runs through Mauer Park, working till sunset, evening walks with my camera, capturing quiet moments in a city that no longer felt foreign. Then, at an exhibition on urban space design, I happened to stand beside Julian, a half-Italian-American architect who had lived in Berlin for over 8 years. We had a brief debate over a model of an eco-friendly house displayed in the center of the room. I said it lacked emotion. He said it was too practical, not poetic enough. We both laughed. The conversation spilled over past the closing hours. He invited me to the bar next door, where jazz music played just loud enough to blur hesitation. Julian wasn't pushy. He didn't offer hollow compliments. He listened. Even when I said nothing of importance. He didn't ask about the past. He only asked what I wanted now. It took me 3 weeks to agree to a second walk with him. 6 weeks to say yes to visiting his apartment. A bright open space with shelves reaching the ceiling and unfinished sketches spread across a raw wood table. There were no promises, no rushed timelines. Everything between us flowed like wind. Easy, untethered. He knew I had been hurt. I knew he'd been through a rough breakup. But neither of us made the other a replacement. We met as 2 grown people, seasoned enough not to expect too much, but open enough not to shut our hearts. I told Julian about Tessa and Liam's upcoming wedding one rainy afternoon, as we sat by a window sharing a mug of hot cocoa. I was invited, I said, not bitter, not broken. He tilted his head. Are you planning to go? Not to make a scene, not to forgive, just, I think I need to be there. Julian didn't press further, he just smiled. Then let me take you. I looked at him. You're okay going to a strange wedding where I'm the ex who got betrayed? He shrugged. If the betrayed ex is you, then you're definitely not the ex anymore. I returned to running every morning, not to escape anymore, but to train my body into a steady rhythm. I changed my diet, got enough sleep, reconnected with old college friends over Zoom. I even started writing again. Not a journal of complaints, but small notes about what brought me peace each day. A month before the wedding, I was officially promoted. Creative director for the European region, overseeing Berlin, Amsterdam, and Warsaw. During the online meeting announcing the decision, my boss smiled and said, "We need someone with both vision and depth. You have both." I shut the laptop after the call and looked out the window. Berlin was bathed in soft lavender sunset. I no longer counted time from the day Liam left. Now, I counted by the milestones no one could take from me. I stepped off the plane at O'Hare on an early summer afternoon, sun blazing but the breeze still crisp. Like Chicago refused to be predictable. Julian held my hand as we walked out of the gate, luggage trailing quietly behind. He'd never been to this city, but he didn't ask many questions. He just said, "Take me to the places you once loved and the ones you've forgotten." I didn't answer right away. Inside me was a strange mix of emotions. Not fear, but not total calm either. All I knew was, this time around, I wasn't the woman walking in with red-rimmed eyes. I was someone who had found her own light beyond the storm. I booked a room at a small boutique hotel in the Gold Coast. Not at Jake's house, not near any old friends. I needed a neutral space, close enough to see the past clearly, but far enough not to be pulled back into it. The next morning, as I sipped coffee on the 5th-floor balcony, my phone lit up with a message from a familiar old number. "Heard you're back. If you have time, I'd really like to see you before the wedding, just us two, Tessa." I looked at the message, then closed my phone. No rush to respond. Julian looked up from the bed. "Do you want to see her?" I nodded slightly. "I think I should. Not for explanations, not to hear apologies. Just to look her in the eye. In a space where nothing is owed anymore." I met her at a small cafe near Lake Michigan. Tessa arrived right on time, hair softly curled, makeup meticulous, but her expression couldn't hide it. Tired, slightly lost. "Aria?" She spoke first, gently. "You look stunning." I gave a polite smile. "Thank you, congratulations on your upcoming wedding." We sat down, and between us was a strange silence, not awkward but no longer familiar. Tessa lightly touched her cappuccino, eyes downcast. "I know. I have no right to ask for anything," she said. "But I had to say, I still think about it. A lot. That no longer holds me," I replied calmly, "and I hope someday it won't hold you either." She paused. "You've really changed." I tilted my head. "Maybe. But that change had nothing to do with you or Liam. I just started living the way I should have from the start." We didn't say much else. When we stood, Tessa looked at me for a long moment, then whispered, "Thank you for coming." Silence was my answer. I walked away without looking back. That evening was the rehearsal dinner. A fancy Italian restaurant in River North, the same one where Liam once took me to celebrate my 29th birthday. I remembered the table we'd sat at, the wine we drank, but this time I walked in with Julian. We arrived 5 minutes late, just enough to avoid formality, but enough to be noticed. Julian wore a sharply tailored gray suit and I wore a navy silk dress, hair in a low bun, lipstick the shade of wine. I hadn't come to surprise anyone, but I could feel it in their stares. Something had shifted. Liam stood across the room chatting with a group of old college friends. When he turned and saw me, his body seemed to pause for a beat. His face looked the same, but somehow dimmer. I gave him a small nod from afar. Julian rested a hand on my back, gentle, not possessive. As we blended into the crowd, I chatted with a few familiar faces. No one brought up the past, but their eyes held a flicker of surprise, sometimes a quiet kind of respect. When Liam and I finally stood next to each other at the bar, I simply said, "Congratulations, Liam." "Thank you for coming," he replied, glancing at Julian, then back at me. "You look different." "Maybe because I've stopped holding on to what no longer belongs to me," I said softly. Julian returned at that moment, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Everything good, babe?" I nodded, turning to him. "Perfect." Liam's gaze lingered for a few seconds. I could see the uncertainty in his eyes, the kind I used to wait for as if it were a deserved punishment. But now, I didn't need it anymore. The wedding took place at a historic lakefront estate in Forest View, about a 40-minute drive from downtown Chicago. The sky was a calm blue without a single cloud, and the maple trees lining the entrance seemed to lean just slightly in the morning sun, as if trying to offer peace to the day. Julian and I arrived a few minutes early, not to make an impression. I just wanted time to take a long breath before walking in. The ceremony space stretched behind the mansion with rows of white chairs neatly arranged, facing a wooden altar adorned with white orchids and soft blue satin ribbons. I recognized a few familiar faces from college, some former mutual friends, the ones who stayed silent when everything between me and Tessa collapsed. They glanced at me with mild unease, but I just smiled gently. No one owed anyone explanations anymore. I picked a seat near the back. Not too close to be drawn in, but close enough not to feel like an outsider. Julian gave my hand a gentle squeeze as we sat down. A simple gesture that reminded me I wasn't alone in this performance. Music drifted from a string quartet. Guests began settling into their seats. The wedding host announced the ceremony would begin in just a few minutes. And then Liam walked out. He wore a light beige suit, a pale gray tie, his hair neatly styled. He stood at the floral altar, eyes fixed straight ahead, but his hands clasped tightly behind his back without him realizing. I looked at him like I would a stranger. No anger, nothing left to mourn, just a quiet emptiness between us I had learned to live with. When Tessa appeared, a low murmur spread through the crowd. Her gown was classic and fitted at the waist, her hair tied low, hands holding a bouquet of pure white flowers. She smiled, but something in her eyes made me pause, not the glow of unshakable joy, but the weariness of a smile practiced too many times. The ceremony unfolded like any other. Vows, smiles, applause. I didn't focus on every word they said, images just flashed through my mind like an old film, ending in a black screen with no subtitles. Then came the congratulations, a long line formed. Julian and I waited our turn. When we reached the front, I stepped forward and handed Tessa a small box, a delicate silver photo frame I picked out in Berlin, with a handwritten note inside. Wishing you both peace. She took it, lips parting. Thank you for coming. No hugs, no handshakes. This wasn't the place for gestures that weren't real. Then I turned to Liam. He looked at me as if searching for something in my expression, a trace that I still cared. I didn't give it to him. I really didn't think you'd come, he said quietly. I looked straight into his eyes. I didn't come for you. I came for me. Liam swallowed hard as if my words dried in his throat. Arya, if I said I was wrong, would it be too late? I paused, then tilted my head slightly. Some things don't need perfect timing, they just need not to repeat. He opened his mouth, but Julian gently placed a hand on my back, a subtle cue. I gave Liam one last polite nod. Don't regret anything, I said, softly like a farewell. Especially not on your wedding day. Julian and I stepped away from the line. As we walked past the garden, I heard laughter and the clink of glasses behind us, but I didn't turn back. I didn't need to see more. We left the reception early before the dancing began. As the car rolled onto the highway out of Chicago, I glanced at the rear-view mirror, and for the first time in years there was nothing behind me I needed to hold on to. 3 months after the wedding, I got an email from Adeline Europe magazine. They wanted to feature me in their Women Reshaping the European Advertising Industry segment. At the time, I was sitting at my favorite cafe, tucked in a Berlin alley, my laptop open with a project list stretching through the end of the year. I read the email again and again, sipped my mint tea, and smiled without saying a word. The photo shoot took place on the rooftop of our Berlin office, where the golden light of day's end wrapped the city in warmth. I wore a tailored cream suit, my hair in a sleek bun, barely any makeup. The Dutch photographer said, "You don't need to smile, your eyes already tell the whole story." When the article came out in early September, my inbox filled with congratulations from colleagues, old friends, even people I hadn't heard from in years. But one name in the Who Viewed Your Profile section on LinkedIn made me pause for a second. Liam Carter. I didn't click on his profile. Didn't need to. I just closed the app, poured myself a glass of wine, and played the acoustic guitar mix Julianne had just sent for me to review. That fall in Berlin was especially beautiful. Julian and I moved into a new apartment in Charlottenburg, with a wide balcony overlooking the park and a cozy corner where he set up his sketching desk. Every weekend we took turns cooking, hosted small dinners with friends, or strolled through Sunday flea markets hunting for overlooked treasures we somehow found meaningful. I also started a separate Instagram account for my street photography. Not to promote, just to preserve. But surprisingly, within a few months, it had gained over 10,000 followers. An art magazine invited me to exhibit in their winter showcase. I declined, because it was enough for me just to see my life come alive through those frames. One late afternoon in October, as Julian and I browsed curtain fabrics, my phone buzzed. A message from Emma, an old classmate in Chicago. Not sure if you've heard, but Tessa and Liam are officially divorced. Word is it wasn't pretty. I paused, unmoving. Not surprised. Not relieved either. I just typed back, "Thanks for letting me know, hope they find peace soon." Julian turned to ask which fabric I preferred. I pointed to a soft ivory roll with a subtle wood grain texture. "That one. Feels warm, but still airy." We left the store hand in hand as a light rain began to fall. I looked up at the low-hung string lights lining the street, their golden glow reflecting off the damp pavement. I used to think revenge meant making others hurt as much as I had. That justice required them to kneel and admit I was wrong. But now, walking past the people who once broke me without feeling pulled back, I understood. Freedom is the gift no apology can offer. I didn't need them to witness my success. I didn't need them to see me happy. I just needed to know that every decision, every step forward, was mine. True happiness isn't about standing above them. It's about no longer needing to compare, no longer needing to look back, no longer carrying a story that's already closed. One evening, while I read by the fireplace, Julian walked over and placed a small box in my hands, not a ring, but a gold key on a delicate chain. "For you," he said. "It's the key to that little house in Tuscany, the one you said you dreamed of spending summers in." I put down the deposit, for our future. I looked at him and said nothing, just tightened my grip around his fingers. And in that moment I knew my life was no longer someone's aftermath. It was the beginning of something else, a story written by my own hand with everything I had overcome to get here. Arya's story isn't just one of betrayal. It's proof that happiness doesn't come from revenge, but from living in alignment with your own values. In real life, any of us can be hurt by the people we once trusted most. But instead of letting pain define you, choose to move forward, care for yourself, and build a life you're proud of. A life quiet enough that no one needs to know how you forgave or how far you've come. What do you think of Arya's journey? If it were you, would you choose forgiveness or walk away in silence? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories.